Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Season 5, Episode 5 episode. So, really, we have it to where a lot of this is pretty much at this point still, really review. But we kind of had a slight tweak in this episode. But bizarrely, there was a whole entire reasoning for that. And so, really, this episode, I think, was kind of, in all brutal honesty, kind of a waste of time. Because we really were to the fact of just going like, well, hey, I can't wait to see, what new they're going to bring to the table. And, in this episode, they brought in another wild card. I'm like, man, this kind of sucks. I'm kind of getting a little tired of the wild cards because basically it kind of wastes time getting rid of someone. It kind of wastes time doing things on this show by just eliminating one person. It honestly would make sense to eliminate two people in one episode because they're going to just keep adding a wild card anyways. Because I think they're going to just... What we were to assume was going to be like, oh, okay, well, they should do multiple different teams and stuff like that. No, they're just trickling in people and just calling them wild cards. I'm like, so you're stretching the episodes out. And I was thinking, I'm like, man, we're going to get to just a really quicker season. And that's fine. And we would just go to the next season. And someone would have been crowned the Masked Singer from a way shorter season. And people would have probably been fine with that. But now we're just trickling in wild card after wild card after wild card. And so we're really just going to have it to where there's going to be a lot more wild cards that we're not going to be able to have enough time to know who they are before they quite possibly either get axed or they get to be just on here for a very short time. And I'm like, man, that kind of sucks for the people that had actually done the real, true, legitimate work on this show. And then you're just tossing in, oh, okay, well, here's this person that just came in here just today, and they're just going to win this show because they came towards the 5th or the 8th episode out of 10, and oh, well, hey, we just had one more wild card to just see if, I'm just waiting for there to be, the top 3 or the top 2, and then they throw, yet another wild card into the mix, and then that wild card ends up winning the season, and it's like, man, that guy didn't have to do, or that person didn't have to do anything, and they just won this show. I feel more so now than I did before that I feel like this show is kind of rigged. It kind of feels much more rigged, especially in this season, than it ever has before, because it's basically going well, people are obviously going to like the wild card much more so than anybody else on the show. So most of the time, the audience is going to obviously keep the wild card because he's new and fresh and whatever. And so it's obvious that they are going to get rid of the people that have been on the show the longest. And so I don't know, I just don't quite like the whole wild card mix up. I just don't like that. It's not really enjoyable. I think if anything, this Masked Singer show is trying to steal kind of from what WWE would do, because WWE would take a wild card rule and have, okay, well, this wrestler is going to be only on this show, and this wrestler is going to be only on this show until there's a wild card rule that applies, and then all of a sudden, this character can jump from this other show and mess with that, and so on and so forth. So I'm like, well, is it going to be like the same thing where all of a sudden you're going to start to see like Black Swan, who was supposed to be in Group A, she's now in Group B because wild card rule? Like, I'm just like waiting for that to happen where it's like, well, these people eventually have to compete with one another anyways because eventually, yeah. So I'm just kind of waiting for all kinds of bizarre things to just scramble and happen or whatever, just to keep people on their toes so they're not expecting the same old episode per week to week to week, is what I'm assuming is eventually going to happen. And some people are, I guess, in their mask costumes going to, I guess, work overtime. Speaking of which, we end up having in this episode one person ended up going down. Literally. Like, not, well, like, we had the crab in this episode who ended up rushing himself off stage because he was feeling sick, or he was like, I'm sure, like dehydrated or whatever. And so I'm wondering if they either one, uh, after the after like after this person was having their time, I wonder if they switched suits or if that person just stayed in the suit the entire time. Because I would have been like, man, I'm not doing the rest of the show. Like, man, I'm gonna go to the hospital, or I'm gonna go and see a doctor and like just check myself out. Because good God, I would have been in that suit the rest of the time. Whoever this person was, I would have been like, no, like if they almost like fainted or whatever, then I would have just been like, no. But we'll see how the crab. Uh, we'll see how because the crab did not go home tonight. Thank God. I think the whole scare of it all was just like, oh man, like I hope he's okay, or whoever this person is. I hope they're okay. Because like, and I was gonna kind of get ticky, and I was kind of getting a little miffed, where we have to where the judges were like, well, yeah, but I'm still gonna talk forever anyways, because this crab ended up coming back onto the stage, and the judges were just like, well, yeah, I'm just gonna talk even longer because I need to still eat time of this episode, and I need to just take all the time in the world to just continue talking. And even Nicole was like, you know what, we need to really get this guy off the stage, because if he was already almost like passing out or whatever, like let's get him off of here. And because we had it uh to where like Ken was going off on his rants, and we had it to where everybody was going off on their rants. I'm like, you should have just like killed it right there and was said like, you know what, I don't care about uh the length of time that this show needs to be for every single whatever. Like, no, like get this guy off the stage and we'll just talk and whatever. And then when his clue comes in, we'll figure out what that clue is. Because, like, if there's somebody that's gonna, like, be. We had it to where there's been a lot of people that have almost unmasked themselves because they were just like, God, this is horrible. This is like, and we're consistently having this happen now. So why isn't this show taking better care of their people by just saying like, okay, they're singing, get them out of here? Because I think that would just be better off. They're, uh, and plus, like, I wonder how long that these characters are actually in these costumes for, and that needs to either be cut in half or something. They need, like, the lesser that these people are in this costume, the better. Uh, and I don't know, like, there's a lot of people that are going to be overheated and whatever, and you hear all kinds of complaints, not complaints, but rightful complaints from any number of people that have done the show, and they're like, yeah, you're dying in this suit. They need to come up with some kind of costume or suit or whatever that they need to rationally think that, oh, okay, like let's install a fan in here, or let's like, they got to realize how thick this stuff is, or they got to like, it's, I don't care if it's like, well, yeah, but they also have to like, they have to up the ante, they have to have cool costumes and whatever, not at the expense of a person's health, really, honestly. That's just my 2 cents, and I had to take a whole rant about it, but that's what I wanted to get into. So, speaking of getting into, let's get into the guesses, and let's get who had gone unmasked. So, we had a wild card in this episode, and bizarrely, in a random turn of events, we had our host of this episode decide who was to go home. So not Nicole, Robin Thicke, Ken, Nicole. They didn't decide who had gone home. No, the host of the show, the girl from Reno 911, the girl that's been hosting the show because Nick had left. She was the one who was to decide who had to go home. And I was like, there's something wrong about that decision. And to me also, I was just like, so really, I guess you can say that quite possibly the show decides who goes home, rather than the people, the audience, the voting, the whatever. No, the people of the show decide who goes home. That's what really tells you about this episode, is like, oh, no. We've already picked the winner, and like every reality show. Like America's Got Talent, those models will have told you, yeah, the winner was already picked. So a lot of people were just waiting to all cash their checks, knowing full well that they were going to be in the top 5, the top 10, the top whatever. And so, really, I guess this show is no different, to be brutally honest, sadly enough. And a lot of people could be like, oh no, there's voting and whatever. Sure, there is. But there's also that the show could look at those votes and go, oh yeah, I guess people really do like this person, but yeah, we're going to vote out so-and-so. Because really, we have it to where, how can the judges come up with that voting so quickly? And there's a lot of times where I feel like this show is much more like tailor-made. Like, man, if somebody was belting out some Whitney Houston at the finale, but they were still getting beat out by somebody like singing Nails on a Chalkboard, some song, and the Nails on the Chalkboard person won and the Whitney Houston person lost. Like, man, like, I don't know. Like, I feel like the show is kind of like, there's a way around all that. I'm getting way too into this, but let's go into the guessing. Let's go into it. So, Black Swan, I'm still assuming it's probably maybe Vanessa Hudgens, even though bizarrely there was like a 10-10-10, like a supermodel thing going on, or some kind of, maybe she's an Olympic athlete, or maybe she has been a judge on some show or something along those lines. Maybe this Black Swan person, who knows? Recently, some people had kind of let me know that it could quite possibly be JoJo, the singer. I don't know. I don't think Vanessa Hudgens could be this person either, but it could be. Uh, we also still have Solange Knowles, Beyonce's sister, as quite possibly a possible person. I see or I've seen kind of pictures of her being a model, so maybe that could be some kind of something. Maybe she's been doing judging somewhere. I don't know. I don't know what the 10-10-10 means. I have no clue. Maybe it means 30. I don't know. We also have Emily Osment, which reasonably McCarthy ended up making that guess, and supposedly there was some clue package that said the word Montana on it. So it probably has to be some celebrity, maybe quite possibly from Montana, maybe a singer from Montana or whatever. Maybe somebody quite possibly from Hannah Montana. Maybe it could be Miley Cyrus behind this Black Swan. Maybe it could be any number of people from Hannah Montana. I don't know. I don't get what the Montana thing was. But if anybody has much more of an idea who or what Montana means, then yeah, help figure out who this person is. If anything, I also had probably said Demi Lovato in previous episodes. Probably I just kind of threw a dartboard of names onto this character, and I think that's where we're going with this episode. So, moving on. Piglet, I'm still assessing and locking in that this is Nick Lachey. There's nobody else that sounds like this person. If anything, there always has to be a boy band guy in every single season. Recently, if it was New Kids on the Block, I would probably be very much tripped up much more than I would within the show. The Rooster, I'm quite possibly still thinking could quite possibly be Donnie Wahlberg, or could be somebody else. Who knows? Because when looking at it, I'm like, well, you would have to probably have the Rooster maybe be Donnie Wahlberg so we can do little cutscenes here and there whenever. And then when he would be showcased on the show, because I haven't seen him sing once. So it's either the Rooster, like we have to eventually come to the consensus who the Rooster actually is. Because what if they end up unmasking this character and then we're like, oh, egg on our face. So, because I don't know, I guess the very last episode they'll have to unmask the Rooster. And I guess we'll have to eventually come to the consensus of who that character is. But if anybody has any clue on who the Rooster is, let me know in the comments below. But moving on. So the Crab, still thinking it's Bobby Brown. I don't think that there's anything that would tell me otherwise. The clue package had said that this person was a chef, and Bobby Brown has been doing some chef stuff lately. And so there's really no excuse that this isn't Bobby Brown. If there is going to be a mention with clue packages of this crab relating to Ghostbusters, then we can definitely cement that it's Bobby Brown, because Bobby Brown had done the soundtrack of Ghostbusters 2. So if the crab is going to relate anything with maybe the new Ghostbusters Afterlife movie or Ghostbusters in general, we can nail down that this is definitely Bobby Brown, but I've already kind of done that anyways. If this is Bobby Brown, I hope that he's fine. I hope that he's okay. And I hope that he's going to be able to continue on with the show. Or just, I would just be like, well, just unmask yourself, buddy. Just unmask yourself. Hey, man, like, Mickey Rourke did it. You can be the second one on the show to do it. But hey, it's just the fact that hopefully he is fine. I was a little confused because I was thinking, I'm like, well, I would have just sent the crab home then. I would have just been like, you know what, hey man, like go ahead and just send yourself home unless like the crab was like, no, I want to do the show and blah blah blah. And that would have been fine. But I don't know. So Bobby Brown, still assuming it's crab. Well wishes for the guy getting sick. Yeah, I freaking would. I would put on football helmet and football equipment and so on and so forth. And I would get severely dehydrated whenever I would go and be outside. So like have that times whatever the heck any of this equipment is, and I'm sure people probably who aren't even God, what is the word? Where everything is kind of closing in on them. That the fear of that, I'm sure, is probably within these suits because RoboCop had that kind of same problem, and he had to spend like 9 hours trying to get his RoboCop suit on, the original RoboCop. So moving on. So we end up having the Chameleon come out, and I think a lot of people were saying, "Hey, he sounds different this week." And so we had Robin Thicke say Wiz Khalifa, and I'm hoping I'm saying that right. I probably ill pronounced it. The rapper. And I would immediately have agreed because also when looking at it, there was a comment guessing who all the people were, and Wiz came up. So I'm like, well, I don't know about rappers, or I don't know enough about current modern music or whatever, considering the picks of which I've had at certain points, because I've been out of the loop, let's just say. But there's also been bizarre things that have kind of just been like, I've just pulled from bizarrish places somewhere. So I guess Wiz could be the weirdest name that I'm saying here, but that's the guy's name. Uh, so this is, I guess, is my new pick for Chameleon, and we'll see if this sticks or if this works. Maybe there might be some uh, clue to this character that could show otherwise. There is not one cementing thing yet to say that this is a athlete or a rapper or a whatever. And so I don't know. We still kind of have to figure all this out when it all comes down to it. So moving on. So the wild card for today was the Bulldog. And so I was thinking all kinds of guesses because I was thinking, okay, a guy with a very high pitched voice. Immediately, I was thinking like, well, hey, maybe it could be Sean Kingston, which he hasn't been in the limelight in a very long time. Maybe it could quite possibly be some of the guesses that the judges said, like Chris Tucker or Eddie Murphy. When also looking at this, I'm immediately thinking that I don't really truly believe that Eddie Murphy is going to be on this show. Because when looking at it, I think that RoboPine is actually Tyrese. Because supposedly there had been leaked footage of him wearing a Masked Singer hoodie. And so I'm assuming he's probably either going to be RoboPine or somebody on this show who we haven't seen yet. So I guess for RoboPine, my guess is going to have to be forcibly Tyrese, even though he's not 60 years of age. So did Tyrese lie about his age? Because we have it to where there's some people that might just be lying about things here and there. So the Bulldog. Recently, I didn't really quite listen and or look into the clue package, and really, I was just kind of like, well, hopefully Bulldog doesn't go home because he actually sounded pretty good. It seems that the Bulldog had supposedly dedicated his performance to this uh, this the co-host or the host of the show, not Nicole Ken or, and so I was like, you know what? There's something very odd about this episode. But I was like, nah, okay, whatever. We'll go with the flow with this. And so I was like, there's something fishy about this episode, but I wasn't thinking, and I just shut my brain off, and I was like, well, I'm probably gonna be wrong regardless because the Bulldog had gone home as a wild card. And I'm like, so what? I'm like, this makes no sense. Because he sounded good, and also it just didn't make sense for him to go home because he's a wild card. I would have thought he would have at least stayed another week. But then we now have to showcase who the Bulldog was. So now is about that time to crank out and either go on Hulu and watch this episode because things tend to happen on this show that would otherwise just irk the crap out of people or just get people really annoyed or just have people say, well, isn't that obvious that it would be so and so person? So let's go on to who the Bulldog actually was right now. The Bulldog was none other than Nick Cannon, comedian, rapper, and host with the most. So, here is my thought process. I'm like, well, Nick Cannon has to show up on this show at some point. I was thinking that it's like, well, hey, maybe it's the Rooster who is Nick Cannon. Or, like, I was assuming or speculating that Nick Cannon was going to come on this show somehow as some masked individual. Like, go ahead and look at the early episodes leading up to this point, and I said, like, Nick Cannon has to come on this show, and he has to come on here in an unusual manner. He can't just show up one day and just say, hey, I'm here, I'm back again. But I wasn't expecting Nick Cannon to show up as the Bulldog. And also when looking at it, I'm like, so they had, like, I was thinking of a bigger, larger guy. And so we also had it to where Nick Cannon disguised his voice also to sound like a much more of a higher register. And so I'm like, God, like, this show tries to just really stick it to you to be like, well, Nick Cannon is a trickster or prankster or whatever, and so people should have honestly been expecting this. But in all actuality, like, I was kind of expecting Nick to come back on the show, but I didn't expect it to be either this soon, or I just didn't expect it to be this kind of way. And so I think that's kind of what baffled me and confused me to where I was like, I wasn't thinking like right away. I'm like, yeah, Nick Cannon, lock it in. And so that's where I got egg in my face because, of course, Nick Cannon is a trickster. And when looking at it, he wasn't able to do like an April Fool's or whatever kind of prank on the show. And so we had it to where Nick Cannon comes back here. I'm happy that Nick Cannon is back in good health and that he is able to come back to the show. And I wish him all the best. And yeah, so Nick Cannon was actually a part of this show as a masked individual. And so yeah, I liked both Nick Cannon and the girl from Reno 911. I don't know her name. I'm sorry. Sadly enough, they probably said it numerous times, but anyways, but I like both co-hosts or hosts, whatever, for a bulk of the show, and so it's kind of sad to like why don't they just co-host now? Like have I don't know. But anyways, I think they were kind of gearing up for eventually someone to eventually have to leave for some health reasons or whatever, or have like scheduling conflicts or whatever. Ken has seemingly a number of movies that he is a part of at some point, uh, and so on and so forth. So looking at this, yeah, I was like, I have a little bit of an egg on my face because this is another loss on to uh, this season. But when looking at it, I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm still doing well. I think I have more wins than losses, I think. So, really, when looking at this, I'm like, I think I have 2 losses for 3 wins. So, I'm almost. I'm almost. We'll see, we'll have to see what happens next week. We'll have to see who ends up getting voted off next week. And yeah, we'll have to just see what happens because next week I'm definitely going to have to pick who is. I'm gonna have to like. We're gonna really have to have a season. We're gonna just kind of like really tighten up things and see how well things go. So speaking of tightening up, I think it's about time to call this an episode. So I'm gonna get out of here. Bye everybody. Goodbye everybody.